Today, we are at Rebuild 21, a two-day conference where we learn more about how to deal with some of the current business challenges. It's all about sustainability, rethinking finance, and rebuilding education. Hi, I'm Judy Tran, and you're watching MakeChangeTV. Welcome. So my first guest for today is Richard Kelly, who is the Managing Director from IDEO Asia Pacific.
Hi.
Welcome to Denmark and MakeChangeTV.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored.
Yes. So you're coming from Shanghai.
I have.
Yes, and working for IDEO.
Right.
And I know that IDEO is well-known, global firm about your design philosophy. Can you share with us about that? What is?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons for being here is that there are lots of big debates here about change itself, about education, about healthcare, a whole bunch of other topics. And IDEO is, lots of people write very nice stories about IDEO. And for the past, 15 years, we're very much engaged in the idea of that designers put sort of IDEO at the middle of innovation, and that we have a process, we have some ideas around design thinking, which is essentially a balanced approach to innovation, where it's not just about market viability, about how much market share someone can have, or about technical feasibility. We start at a different place where it's about desirability. What are the needs, wants and desires of people? And that starts the process off. And so we apply that in all kinds of range, whether it's new sort of through commercial impact, through social impact, or through environmental impact. Because we're sort of infatuated with the idea of creating impact and change in the world.
So design for you is everything, but is this really the answer to all the social problems and all the challenges that we're facing right now? I mean, how should we work with design when it comes to social innovation?
Well, I think most of the time, we often have this idea that if you ask the same question, you end up with the same answer. So the way we do this is usually by looking out in the world and becoming inspired. It enables you to ask new questions, and from new questions you end up with discovering new value, and through new value you end up with new solutions that otherwise weren't thought of before. And so lots of these intractable problems are because lots of people ask the same questions over and over and over again. And so the finance discussion we had this morning is all about looking at things from outside in, and from, the model of finance is very much a Northern European, Northern American kind of thing, and yet 2/3 of the world's population lives outside of that model. And so if you look at there for a series of inspiration, you end up with new questions to ask. When you ask those questions, you'll come up with new ideas.
So when I'm talking about the finance sector, how do you see the situation right now, in Asia Pacific, but also in the rest of the world in general? How are we doing when it comes to redefining or redesign the finance sector?
I mean, I think it was interesting. So this morning I presented this idea of, we created this fictional bank called Hotpot, which is essentially taking the values and behaviors that Asians have, even one down to sort of the notion of interdependence. So that money is essentially a means to an end, it's not the reason for being. And so if you look at sort of the values and behaviors of Asians, it's much more about dignity, it's about trust, it's about legacy, it's about all of those other things that are essentially where banks started, but they kind of have lost touch with that piece of humanity. And so if you could either look to a few Silicon Valley folks who are doing things like Square, where sure, it's going to change the industry, or you could look at where change actually matters and where there's 2/3 of the world's population, and actually whether it's M-Pesa in Africa or it's Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, all of those are, for me, they'll change the industry, but they'll also change the world. And so it's the balance of how do you use those new behaviors and new values in redefining what the industry looks like.
That's great, because I think that most of our viewers are actually social entrepreneurs, and so for social entrepreneurs, it's really about a vision, the social mission that they want to achieve, whereas money is just a mean to it.
Right.
But as the current situation, the banking sector is really about profit maximizing.
Sadly.
Yeah. So do you think that it's possible for us to really redesign the whole finance system that really based on values, based on purpose, you know, in before profit? And what does it take for us to get there?
I mean, I think it's interesting you talk about social innovation. And for me, social innovators and social entrepreneurs look at markets that are fundamentally broken. And finance is almost at that place where it's kind of fundamentally broken. And that I would say that there's a critical mass of workarounds that people have figured out how to get around the world of finance and banking that are already out there. And so there's an adage that the future exists, you just have to look for it. I clearly think that those things are already out there. And so I think the world of social entrepreneurs and social innovation are already beginning to point to what those new values are. Whether the banks and the financial world follows, that's up to them. But the majority of the population is going to move forward with or without them, with the values that they already have or without them.
Yeah. So they have to follow.
That's my belief, yeah. They can make it speed it up, or make it scale it, or they can get left behind.
Okay. But they cannot destroy it.
Well, they've destroyed it pretty much themselves, if you ask me.
Okay. So what are the implications to make this transition or transformation? Can there be any implications?
I mean, I think that, the one big message I brought here, and I often bring outside of Asia, is that Asia is always seen as being on the edge of the world. And for those that live there now, for us, it's the center of the future. And that notion that 2/3 of the world's population live there, that all the rate of change is high, there's this huge sense of optimism, and it's the rising tide, often makes the rest of the world feel very uncomfortable about how that feels, and that the assumptions that people have in the West that how the world works is not how the world's going to work in the future. And so those sets of values are somewhat still deeply rooted in people, but the West has kind of forgotten some of those, and so as we rediscover what those are, the implications of the world's not going to be the same as it was, and where the power bases were and who gets to make those decisions and who gets to say what models work and don't work will shift. It makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. What I also find interesting, because now you mentioned, that the Asian model, we have some more values, because I'm from Asia, as you can see.
And I live there, but I'm not there.
Yeah, yeah, and I live here, but that's not a story. The Asian has more values, where we need to kind of find a balance. But we also see the fact now that in China and some of the Asian countries, they actually have many billionaires, people that really getting rich and profit maximizing, of the new opening economy. So there is a contrast there, isn't it? Or how do you see that?
I'd use the word tension. I think there's a tension clearly in the system where, the growth rate of billionaires in China and lots of Asian countries is really huge. But I would say this, which is in the 4 years I've been in China, I think there's a general openness to what those catalysts of change are going to be. People realize that all the language around changing the growth plan and changing what that kind of quality of growth is going to be in the next 15 years is still open. So it would be great for and we said it this morning, it's not east or west, it's east plus west. And so the idea of doing projects together to find new value is clearly what China, I think, is all about. It's not that they have the right model and the West doesn't. They're just open for change. Nobody knows what the right answers are, but they know they need to be open to how that happens and what does market dynamics mean in China, maybe something different. But in the process of helping China figure out market dynamics, ideally the rest of the world will also change.
Yeah. It's great. It's really about collaboration, co-creation.
I think so. I mean, we often have this saying is like, if you really care about the question, you can't own the answer. So if you really care about the question of the future of values and the future of the planet, it's not an east or west thing, it's something and something else.
Yeah, it's great. It's about finding the balance.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this interview. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Very honored.